A gunman has opened fire at a school in central Russia, killing at least 13 people and injuring 21, Russian executives say. Victims comprise 7 children at the school of about 1,000 pupils in the city of Izhevsk. The gunman killed himself at the scene. He was a former pupil of the school. Russian media have posted videos which show up to indicate panic interior the building the shooting took place. Some footage shows blood on a classroom floor and a bullet hole in a window, with children crouching down underneath desks. 7 children and 6 adults were killed, including 2 security guards and 2 teachers, according to Russian officials. Staff and pupils have been evacuated the school buildings. One local MP said the attacker, named as Artem Kazantsev, had been armed with 2 pistols. A video posted online by the investigative committee shows the gunman lying deceased on the floor wearing a t-shirt with a Nazi symbol and a balaclava. Investigators are searching his space of residence. A mourning period until 29 September has been announced by the head of the region. Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesperson said he's deeply mourning the attack. The school is in the center of Izhevsk, a city of about 650,000 residents, near to central government buildings. 3 people have died and scores injured after a 6-story building collapsed in Kiambu, central Kenya. Rescue efforts are below way and emergency workers have managed to draw a child the rubble. Several others have also been rescued, but, sadly, some are feared to have succumbed to their injuries, Kiambu County Gov Kamani Wamatangi said. Building collapses in Kenya have in the past been accused on destitute structural design or sloppy construction. The CA of this collapse is unclear, but the building was below construction when it came down. Eyewitnesses said it fell onto an adjacent building. It's not known how many people are still below the debris. The baby who was rescued is presently being treated in hospital, national broadcaster KBC reports. Soldiers, workers, the Kenya Ruddy Cross and National Youth Service personnel as well as local volunteers are all at the scene in Kiambu town, which is about 20 kilometers, 12 miles, and of the capital, Nairobi. Photos the site indicate a mechanical digger and rescue workers trying to discover survivors. Toronto, the Canadian government announced Monday it'll no longer require people to wear masks on planes to guard against COVID-19. Transport Canada said the existing rules for masks will arrive off October 1. We are able to do this because tens of millions of Canadians rolled up their sleeves and got vaccinated, Transport Minister Omar Alghabra said. Government executive also confirmed Canada is paying the vaccine requirement for people entering the country at the finish of the month. Canada, like the United States, requires foreign nationals to be vaccinated when entering the country. Number modify in the mandate is expected in the U.S. in the close term. Unvaccinated foreign travelers who are allowed to enter Canada are currently subject to mandatory arrival tests and a 14-day quarantine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has agreed to let a cabinet order enforcing mandatory COVID-19 vaccination requirements at the border expire September 30. The Associated Press reported latest week Trudeau signed off on it. The government is also ending random COVID-19 testing at airports. Filling out information in what became an unpopular ArriveCan app will also no longer be required. Some accused it for delays at airports. The government will also no longer be required passengers to have pre-board tests for cruise ships. The removal of border measures has been facilitated by a number of factors, including modeling that indicates that Canada has largely passed the peak of the Omicron BA.4 and BA.5 fueled wave, Canada's high vaccination rates, lower hospitalization and death rates, as well as the availability and of vaccine boosters, including new bivalent formulation, rapid tests, and treatments for COVID-19, the government said in a release. Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Iran's powerful Revolutionary Guard on Monday unleashed a wave of drone strikes and artillery, targeting what Tehran says are bases of Iranian Kurdish separatists in northern Iraq, a semi-official news agency reported. It was the second such cross-border assault since the weekend, at a time when Iran is convulsing with protests over the death of a 22-year-old Iranian Kurdish woman who has been detained by the nation's morality police. On Saturday, the Guard said it targeted bases and training camps of Kurdish separatist groups in northern Iraq, claiming it inflicted serious damage. Protests over the death of Mahsa Amini have spread across at least 46 cities, towns, and villages. Iranian state TV has suggested that at least 41 protesters and police have been killed since the protests began September 17. An Associated Press count of official statements by authorities tallied at least 13 dead, with more than 1,200 demonstrators arrested. In Monday's report, the semi-official Tasnim news agency said the Guard's attacks were in response for the support that the separatists have allegedly provided for the unrest interior Iran, as well as their attempts to smuggle in weapons. Latest year, the Guard similarly attacked what it called bases of terrorist groups in northern Iraq. There was no immediate comment. The Iraqi government. The two neighboring countries have near political and military ties, and Tehran had provided extensive military support for Baghdad during its years-long war against the extremist Islamic State group. Germany's foreign ministry said Monday it summoned Iran's ambassador following the protests and particularly regarding the brutal actions of police there. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock called for new sanctions against Iran following the violent crackdown. We will presently have to speak very quickly in the EU about further consequences, which for me also includes sanctions against those responsible, she told German news agency dpa in Berlin. The attempt to presently suppress peaceful protests with even more fatal force mustn't go unanswered, she added. Beirut Lebanese army retirees scuffled with parliamentary guard troops as they briefly broke through a cordon leading to parliament in downtown Beirut during a rally Monday over their decimated monthly pay amid the country's economic meltdown. The troops managed to thrust the crowd back and fired tear gas, forcing the elderly retirees to turn away the street. After a brief while, they gathered nearby to continue their protest and demand higher pay. The rally came as banks in this crisis-hit Lebanon partially reopened Monday following a week-long closure amid a wave of heists in which assailants stormed at minimum 7 bank branches earlier this month, demanding to withdraw their trapped savings. The Organization of Banks in Lebanon had said latest Monday it was going on strike amid bank holdups by depositors and activists. Public sector workers and retired officers and soldiers frequently protest in Lebanon, demanding better salary and pensions. However, scuffles with active officers are a sign of the ongoing meltdown and growing chaos in the tiny Mideast nation. Lebanon's cash-strapped banks had latest closed for a prolonged period back in October 2019, for 2 weeks, during mass anti-government protests triggered by the crisis. That year, the banks imposed strict limits on cash withdrawals, tying up the savings of millions of people. The country's economy has since spiraled, with about 3/4 of the pop plunged into poverty. The Lebanese pound has lost over 90% of its cost against the dollar. The frustrations boiled over this month, with mad and desperate depositors, including one armed with a hunting rifle, started holding up the banks. One of them, Salih Hafez, broke into a Beirut bank department with a fake pistol and retrieved some $13,000 in her savings to cover her sister's cancer treatment. However, only a handful of bank branches opened Monday, accepting only customers with prior appointments for corporate transactions. The partial reopening was to continue indefinitely, until banks can safe the safety of their employees. Crowds of anxious Lebanese gathered around ATM machines. "I've been here for 3 hours, and they will not let me in or schedule an appointment," Fadi Al-Asta told the Associated Press. Exterior a bank department in Beirut. "The security guards can let us in one at a time and check for weapons. Is not that their job?" George Al-Hajj, president of Lebanon's Federation of Bank Employees Syndicates, said branches have downsized to have a larger number of security guards per branch. "Our goal is not to damage anyone, But we wish to go to work feeling secure, Al-Hajj said. We're also human beings. Tensions were simmering in the southern city of Sidon. State security forces armed with assault rifles stood exterior some bank branches. Some police officers and army soldiers, whose salaries have lost over 90% of their value, unsuccessfully tried to crack into a bank department to gather tiny cash bonus recently granted by the government. Depositors Outcry, a protest group that supported bank heists to retrieve savings, said Monday it was committed to a war on the banks, but that it had also called for a meeting with the bankers to discover solutions so that depositors can live with dignity. We will continue organizing actions, including powerful actions that'll target and shock the banks, said the group's media coordinator, Musa Agassi. Lebanon's talks with the International Monetary Fund on a bailout have progressed sluggishly, with authorities failing to implement critical reforms, including restructuring the banking sector and lifting banking secrecy laws. Latest week, a visiting IMF delegation criticized the government's slowness to implement desperately needed financial reforms. For more emergency news, subscribe.